Well, we'll get started. Thank you very much for coming today. We're here to discuss the operating and capital supplemental budgets that we're planning to pass over to the Senate in the next few days. Representative Hunter will give the details on the operating budget, and Representative Dunshee will give you the details around the capital budget. But first, I just want to give you a brief view of what you can expect over the next several days. You have a list of bills that are necessary to implement the budget, and those bills will be heard in Ways and Means Committee today at 1 o'clock, and we'll take executive action on a number of those bills this afternoon as well. There's a capital budget meeting in about 25 minutes to take action on the constitutional debt limit bill as well. We placed a striking amendment on the bar to substitute House Bill 2127. That's the operating budget that we passed over to the Senate on the last day of regular session on March 8th. And we'll be taking action on that starting tomorrow. It's not an agreed-to budget yet, but I think it reflects our core values, protecting K-12 education and the safety net. And it also incorporates some of the concerns and ideas that we heard from the other side. We'll continue to reach out and to talk and to negotiate with the Senate as we move along. But we know that in order for us to have any opportunity to get done within the 30-day time frame of this special session, which is next Tuesday, that we have to begin this process. Someone has to get the ball rolling. That's why we're here today, and that's why we're moving forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to Representative Hunter to go through the operating budget.
Morning, everybody. So we put a budget on the bar today that is similar in most of the details to the budget we passed out on March 8th. We changed some of the structural elements in it, so a lot of the numbers in the balance sheet move around quite a bit. This is mostly an effort to keep our process moving, to keep the procedural steps, many of which have significant delays built in to allow for transparency so that people can see what we're doing. Number of 24-hour waiting periods from when we introduce a striking amendment to when it can be acted on in the House for second reading and be amended, and then another 24-hour waiting period for when we go to third reading again, so that people have an opportunity to see what has actually changed in it. The big changes in this budget proposal are the removal of the K-12 apportionment shift. We're assuming something that many of you have covered already, which is using $238 million. It's an adjustment to how our ending fund balance works. We're calling it the working capital reserve. We're modernizing the way we handle cash. And as we went back and looked at how we handle the local government sales tax account, we found there's a lot of money sitting there for a long time. Many states, including states with AAA bond ratings, use the same mechanism. Instead of leaving that money sitting in a separate account for a month and a half to 2 months, we're now having that money sit in the general fund, which is how we normally would do concentration anyway. It doesn't change our cash position. It doesn't delay any payments. Keeps everything within the current biennium. The adjustments that we make to the budget, we make numerous small adjustments to keep the budget functional, to keep the start dates on cuts current and effective. Leaves us with about a $336 million ending fund balance. There are no reductions in education, in higher ed. Remains the single administrative reduction in our early learning, which is not a reduction that will be felt, we think, by children on the ground. It doesn't change the healthcare budget from March 8th. Makes a couple of minor changes that we heard pretty consistent feedback that one of the reductions we had done in the DD budget couldn't actually be accomplished and would have put a bunch of our assisted living partner facilities out of business. And we found that the required 1163 training cost less than we had originally assumed, thankfully. There's some administrative savings and corrections. In other human services, there was a restoration that we had tried to do on TANF, on the size of the TANF grants, a 5% increase that we're no longer going to try and restore. We'll stay with the original budget from last year. and we're capturing $5 million in underspend in the Housing and Essential Needs program. It's taken us a little longer to ramp that new program up than we had originally expected it to take, and we're, again, capturing about $5 million in administrative savings there, and there's some changes in the natural resources that use dedicated funds in different ways. The proposal, as we said, balances in the current biennium. We have done an outlook for the 13-15 biennium, and we're close. We're about $45–50 million off, and I'll point out that that's about 3 orders of magnitude smaller than the error that we would assume in the revenue forecast in that time period. And those corrections can easily be made just with normal budgetary changes in the 13-15 time period. So we're comfortable that as we come out of the recession, we move into a relatively stable model moving forward. And I'll point out that coming into the special session in December, if you'd looked at an outlook, you would have found a several billion-dollar shortfall. And so the changes that we're making in the package of bills that we're doing with this, along with the changes in the budgets, bring down the expected shortfall in the 13-15 biennium by almost all of the problem, leaving the problem in the sort of the normal range of budget problems. And I would, after the last 2 years, I'd be very happy to move into the normal range of budget problems. The bills that we're looking at doing, we're going to hear them in committee starting at 1 o'clock this afternoon. We are repealing Initiative 728. The revenue that would have gone into that can be more effectively used, funding our basic education requirements. As the court has clearly pointed out, that's the top priority for us. We were basically double counting the growth. All of us who did the basic education planning process assumed that we would use the revenue from 728 to fund the new basic education requirements. So this removes about $1 billion from the 13-15 problem definition. In that, there is a study, a basically joint select committee with 8 legislators and 3 appointees from the governor's office to create a plan for how we are actually going to address the McCleary problem, which is not covered in my assumptions about the 13-15 biennium. None of the budgets that we are looking at today have a resolution for our required step up in funding in the 13-15, 15-17, and 17-19 biennia to address the requirements in the McCleary. We will all agree that we will need to do that. That will be a significant legislative planning exercise this summer. You'll be able to hear about that this afternoon. Yes, the working capital reserve bill, a balanced budget bill that will require a balanced budget in the current biennium with a 4-year outlook, largely technical bill about revenue consolidation. We'll be hearing a bill that proposes reduction in the 2007 early retirement factors and elimination of that. K-12 health benefit bill, which again you'll hear about. A fix for DSHS support enforcement that we didn't quite get right earlier in the regular session. A similar problem with how interpreters are handled. We're trying to address a court issue and significant changes in community supervision that we think will have a tremendous long-term reduction in recidivism based on experience in other states and experience in a pilot project we've been doing in King County. So in closing, we have a budget that is balanced, that has a reasonable projection for 13-15, and does not make cuts in K-12 education or in higher education.
Thank you. So I'm here actually about the #1 priority of our caucus, which was to create jobs. And if you have looked at the websites of other caucuses, they've all said the same thing. And it's been very frustrating, the pseudo negotiations that we've been through. And so our caucus feels that there's actually an urgency and that you people are all covering the wrong story here. And if you look at this morning's Olympian, John Gillis gets it right that about 12,000 people are going to lose their unemployment benefits, run out of them on April 22nd. So really jobs are what our caucus priority has been. And so we're moving a budget forward that has, Senator Kilmer and I have built this, attempting to incorporate as many of the Republican ideas as we could. Their last objection was to use the cleanup money out of MODCA for bonding for cleanup, so we actually have dropped that, and that, oddly enough, the number of that is $238 million, not related to the operating budget number, but an odd coincidence. And hopefully getting to a position that we can get some agreement from them. Jobs really are important. Politicians used to say things like we can grow our way out of the economy. That seems to have left the argument, the discussion. I want to bring that back in. But I want you to listen for 2 minutes to a woman who was actually an architect and is now attempting to be doing ironworking, and she actually articulates the situation for many people better than I can. And so if you start that.
I'm a registered architect, and I've worked in that industry over 20 years, but it slowed down about 3 years ago.
Right.
It really didn't make the press. 50% of architects across the country were basically laid off.
Wow.
Or lost their jobs, went out of business, whatever. And it was slow to, I had to make some decisions, so I looked into going into the trades. I just started a few months ago, and I've been dispatched to 3 jobs. They were a few days in length, so it's not something like a normal office job where you would get work for 40 days, and there's nothing with benefits and stuff like that. You have to build up hours to get that, so we all need work to build up those benefits. I went down to the food bank, and I've talked to a lot of people. I handed out turkeys at something for Thanksgiving that was with a friend for a volunteer deal, and there are just whole families hanging, waiting for this kind of help.
Right.
And it's not charity. It's unemployment comes out of wages that you made in the past. It's an insurance that you paid into, so I just feel like something has to be done to keep balls rolling. Absolutely, we need the construction funds to go through, and we need the work. For example, in our union, we're iron workers. We do anything with steel. There's a lot of rebar that goes into construction work in highways, roads, bridges, right off the bat. But we do all the structural steel, we do everything else. I've got friends in other trades that are doing concrete, they're laborers. One of them was just laid off. I've got people that are electricians. They're all very slow. It's construction-wide, it's a problem right now. And until the economy picks back up, we're going to be struggling with this. So people need something to keep themselves going.
Sure.
So we need to do jobs. We have the construction season coming very quickly upon us. The Republicans have said, hold this until we get the operating budget, and now they're not negotiating the operating budget until we do these policy change bills. It's very frustrating to people who need work, to these people who are going to lose their unemployment. A coalition of business and labor came together at the beginning of December and said, we want to do a $2 billion package, put companies to work, put people to work. The Republicans said, no, that was too big. We then said, okay, we'll come back to about 1.2, somewhere in there. We did that. Then they say, we don't want to do the cleanup bonds. We said, okay, we won't do that. The spot we're at, we are attempting to meet them at every possible way to get a compromise and to get jobs. And that's the point. That's what's on the bar in front of you. Thank you.